Hi, this is Aaron Wilson. One of the biggest blockbuster trades in Texans franchise history unfolded Monday, a move that surprised and disappointed teammates of former Texans Pro Bowl left tackle Laremy Tunsil, five-time Pro Bowl selection, sent to the Washington Commanders. And here's what they got in exchange for him. They trade Tunsil and a 2025 fourth-round draft pick to the Commanders, and they get back a 2025 third-round pick, a 2025 seventh-round pick, 2026 second-round pick, and a 2026 fourth-round selection. And there are many reasons why. There's not one reason why they made this trade at this time, but I want to break down some of the reasons why they made the trade and what's next for the Texans after unloading the best pass blocker on the team. So this comes back to money primarily with Tunsil and age. And he will turn 31 in August. And so with Laremy, in terms of his contract, even though, yes, he's one of the best left tackles in the NFL, he's got a $20.9 million base salary that the Commanders acquired and a $28.5 million salary cap figure. So the Texans, they created some savings, $13.85 million in immediate salary cap savings in terms of cash with both years combined, this year and next year that he was under contract for, $42.7 million in cash and salary off the books for the Texans. And that's the particulars, the facts of what happened. But here's why they made the trade. Tunsil at 31 is going to have less value, and you're going to have 1 year left on the contract. He wanted a new deal, and the Texans weren't looking to get older at the offensive tackle position. They're looking to get younger ultimately. And as talented as Laremy is, one of the best technicians, best pass blockers, and a team captain, they felt like they got appropriate value back in exchange for Tunsil. All of it comes back to how do you replace him. We'll get to that in a little bit, but I want to go through some of the reasons why they traded him. They didn't have a gigantic issue with the penalties, even though, yes, he was the NFL penalty leader with 17 false starts, 19 total penalties assessed. So you look at Laremy and 12 false starts, 17 total penalties, 19 assessed. You look at where Laremy is, definitely prone to penalties, but still a great pass blocker. And overall, they're just making changes. They're starting over with the offensive line. They're looking for leadership. And Laremy, in terms of personality, great guy, just not the vocal leader type, not the type that's going to be someone that's going to, tell everybody, hey, this is what we're doing, and get on, guys. He's more laid back than that. You have to be yourself ultimately, and that is his personality, leadership style, lead by example type. And they also, of course, cut Shaq Mason. So they're making a lot of changes there with the offensive line. And with Laremy, it's just a case of they want to get younger, they wanted to get the value, and they didn't see themselves doing another contract. And originally, he was acquired in a trade from the Miami Dolphins, and they got good value out of him. They got several Pro Bowl seasons, and I thought he played exceptionally well. He's still an explosive tackle, still one of the best pass blockers in the NFL. Just ask Myles Garrett just a year ago when he shut him out in that AFC wildcard playoff win at NRG Stadium. So you look at Laremy, taking him out of the equation, and if you don't replace him appropriately, yes, it's possible. The pass blocking can regress. It can get even worse. So, that's the downside of trading a Laremy Tunsil. What do you do with this draft capital? We would hope that they get some good players in what I call a depth draft for guards, defensive tackle. There's some good tight ends. There's a lot of things that you could look at, and you try to get younger and less expensive at the position. You do have, in terms of replacements, on this roster, you could shift over Titus Howard, former first-round draft pick. He's played left tackle before. He played very well when he filled in for Laremy when Laremy broke his thumb and had to have season-ending surgery a couple years ago. So you could move Titus Howard. I think he's willing and capable to play left tackle. That isn't a long-term solution necessarily, but if he plays very well, you could revisit and rethink how you feel about him at the left tackle spot. You have Blake Fisher at right tackle, and he started 6 games. He had some problems, especially the Chiefs game where he gave up 3 sacks and he gave up a lot of pressures. I think it was 7 pressures. So you hope to see progress, big progress this offseason from Blake Fisher. They still need to fill the guard spots. They didn't address that or the offensive line in the first day of free agency. It's just one day. They've got no football games till September. A lot of time for Nick Caserio to address the offensive line. I expect him to. That's something that DeMeco Ryans made very clear, reinforced at the NFL Scouting Combine, that they're going to put an emphasis on getting the offensive line better. So far, they haven't done that, but there are still some good guards out there and a few tackles that could help them if they do decide, well, we'd rather have Titus Howard play inside at guard again and go about it that way. In terms of free agents and what's still out there, I want to go over a couple of the names and kind of look at what they can do to try to address the offensive line if they were to go ahead and spend. To me, the top one, and has a lot of familiarity with the division, is Cam Robinson. And Cam had a rough ending to last season, but he was a overall very efficient pass blocker. And I think in terms of his career, he's been good at pass blocking, just not coming off of a great season. Maybe they get him at a better price. Tyron Smith, a lot of tread is off the tire, so people may not want to commit to him long term. Still a really solid option at left tackle, and I could see him getting some action. And I'm not saying that the Texans are going to make a move on him. I was not impressed with Jedrick Wills Jr. A lot of nagging injuries. He was basically benched. Pretty ugly season, and he is a former top 10 pick. I don't know if that's necessarily the answer. I would have some concerns about weight and health with Trent Brown. So he's in free agency. There is familiarity with Nick Caley with Joe Notaboom. So he's someone that they could think about. Did not grade out super high for the LA Rams. So those are some things they could do. And, I want to shift focus a little bit here and talk about guard. And we've been talking about Will Fries, and we haven't seen a deal yet for Will. We still expect him to do very well in free agency, perhaps better than Patrick McCarry did with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Tevin Jenkins, Will Fries, I've heard both guys are out of their price range, so we'll see. Do their numbers come up? James Daniels, of course, is off the market, and so that's not available. I haven't heard about interest in Mekhi Becton. To me, the guys that make sense, with Aaron Banks now off the market too, Brandon Scherf, veteran guard from the Jaguars. I'm sure he could mend fences with Azeez Al-Shaair, so they could work something out, shake hands and let bygones be bygones. He was protecting his quarterback, and it got feisty between those guys. I'm sure they could be teammates, though. Kevin Zeitler had a great season for the Detroit Lions, and if he wants to keep playing, to me, he makes a lot of sense. He is tough. He's nasty. He's a technician. He's been very successful. He's been part of winning programs with the Ravens and also now with the Detroit Lions. So, yeah, he's 34, but if you spend about $6 or $7 million, you can get something done with him. Probably the biggest thing that happened today that affects the Texans was something that had nothing to do with their own players, and that was the Jaycee Horn deal. So Jaycee is now the highest paid corner. He plays for the Carolina Panthers. I don't think he's nearly as good as Derek Stingley Jr. He's an excellent long, rangy corner, but not as good as Stingley. This just drove up the price, though, for what I thought was already going to be expensive to make Stingley an all-pro the highest paid corner in football. And it's going to be with the same agent that Jaycee Horn negotiated on behalf with the Panthers. It will be David Mulugheta, so they'll be doing business with David. And so it's a 4-year, $100 million contract, which averages $25 million. There was $70 million in total guaranteed money. And for Derek Stingley Jr., the valuation of that, and it's no deal imminent, they're not in talks yet, probably at some point this offseason, similar to the way they did things with Nico Collins, or perhaps after June 1, when they get the $9 million available from the Shaq Mason post-June 1 designation, I expect them to enter negotiations. So that will likely exceed the $25 million, and I could see it getting closer to $30 million. We'll see how many million APY, average per year, in terms of compensation, Derek Stingley Jr., who's very deserving of a new deal, how much does he beat that by? I don't think there's any real stress on this. I just think it's going to be very expensive, and it's a good problem to have. Reason I bring them up, too, another reason for the Laremy Tunsil trade is they have a lot of financial goals besides having a tackle like Laremy on the books. So it's saving money for a Stingley. It's having enough money for C.J. Stroud next year when he's eligible for a new contract. For Pro Bowl pass rusher Will Anderson Jr. Perhaps for Jalen Petrie, I've heard there's a different financial expectation at this moment, but gaps can be bridged. We'll see where that winds up with a nickel that I would think would be in that $3 to $45 million range. And we'll see if the Texans want to go to that level and that threshold for him as he heads into a contract year. Former second-round pick, former Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year. They lost a lot when they didn't have him in the lineup. He saw that they didn't have as much pop. They didn't have as much playmaking skills around the line of scrimmage. And he is a hybrid linebacker, safety, does a lot of good things around the football. And I thought, when he was in coverage, at this position, this suits him better. So we'll see what happens with Jalen Petrie and how they go forward. But a couple of things just on the negotiating horizon to think about, because you always want to think about the big picture, right? When you're thinking about a football team and how they plan things. And it's not like there was no activity today, and it certainly kept me busy. So I was involved in a lot of activity. And so, just kind of recapping, I want to go through some of the deals and kind of what happened here. So, we'll kind of start at the beginning. As I reported would happen and said this on KPRC on the show and also on www.click2houston.com and on social media, Sheldon Rankins is back with the Texans as predicted. 1 year, about $7 million. Haven't seen the breakdown yet of his bonus and guarantees. But by having Sheldon back, they effectively replace Foley Fatukasi or Mario Edwards Jr. So it'll be Sheldon Rankins and Tim Settle Jr. as the defensive tackles. And I think they'll still try to add to that position, try to draft someone. So I look at, defensive tackle as kind of an unfinished position, not done yet after adding Sheldon Rankins. But remember the 3 sacks he had? Career high 6 sacks for the Texans 2 years ago. They got outbid. This is less expensive. They were at the $11 million mark a couple of years ago. A year ago when they were trying to keep him from going to free agency. Instead, he joined the Cincinnati Bengals, 2 years, $26 million. He had viral meningitis at the end of last season. He is healthy now, I'm told. So they get Sheldon Rankins. I've heard he's extremely excited to be back. So welcome back to Sheldon Rankins. So that was the first deal of the day. Second deal of the day, and a lot of these had a special teams theme for Frank Ross and those top units that he coaches. So you get back into the return game with Braxton Berrios. Braxton was an all-pro return specialist with the New York Jets. He was with the Miami Dolphins. He did have a injury last season. He tore his ACL. I'm told the recovery is going fine. So it's a small deal. It's 1 year, $2 million, $300,000 to sign, $1.3 million base salary. He gets $11,765 per game active roster bonus, $200,000 playtime incentive clause. And so last year, kind of unproductive, but really good athlete. I think that he'll add to the locker room and be good on special teams. He can also cover punts and kickoffs, so good to get him. And another deal that we expected, and we reported the offer, and the offer's now been accepted. And that's Derek Barnett, their third defensive end. I think this is a key signing, kind of flies under the radar maybe around the league, but this is a good football player. He returned 2 fumbles for touchdowns last season for the Texans. Barnett, 1 year, $5 million, $1.5 million to sign, $2.25 million base salary, $14,706 per game active roster bonus, up to $250K total. And there's additional incentives that push the total maximum value of the deal to $5 million. Not a great pass rusher, but a good pass rusher, a good run stopper. And I think he helps them. They're a better football team with him on the squad. And then Tremont Smith. Remember Tremont? They were outbid on him when he joined the Broncos a couple years ago. Mostly plays special teams. He gets a 2-year deal with a max value of $7.5 million. He is now the highest paid core special teamer, meaning someone that covers punts and kickoffs in the NFL. So he got $4.5 million guaranteed. And so he's previously with the Texans. This deal negotiated by Matt Glosa, Generation Sports Group. So they get him back. They tried to get him back on the fold, but the Broncos just gave him such a strong contract, about 2 years, $5.5 million. Remember that he had a couple of interceptions, picked off Dak Prescott twice in that game against the Cowboys that they didn't win, up at AT&T Stadium, had 10 tackles and a forced fumble against the Kansas City Chiefs that year. So a Good football player, one of the fastest guys on the team, 4.33 speed in the 40-yard dash. He can fly. Former option quarterback in high school. Good athlete, good guy, Frank Ross guy. So Braxton Berrios, Tremont Smith come in for the special teams. And they weren't done with the pass rush. And I thought this was another good, affordable signing. 1 year, $5.25 million for Darrell Taylor. He's a former Seattle Seahawk, played last year for the Chicago Bears. So when you get Taylor, they've got a former second-round draft pick, so he's got the pedigree from University of Tennessee, was traded to the Bears last year for a 2025 sixth-round draft pick. And so last year, 32 tackles, 3 for losses, 3 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 2 pass deflections. Big guy, 6'4", 267, has 24.5 career sacks, 25 tackles for losses, 43 quarterback hits, 7 forced fumbles, 124 tackles. So good athlete. Definitely someone has an SEC pedigree. They like to get players from that conference. Who doesn't? And then they still weren't done at wide receiver, and they get a player from the Kansas City Chiefs, Justin Watson, and he gets I think it's going to be a 1-year deal. We haven't seen terms on this one yet. A former 5th-round draft pick from the Ivy League from University of Pennsylvania. Last year, 22 catches, 289 yards, 2 touchdowns, played every game, started twice, catching passes from Patrick Mahomes. Bigger receiver at 6'2", 215 pounds. So he's been productive, and I think that he's someone that you think about, when you're adding to the receiving position, adding some depth, getting a guy that can help them and just, really, help the special teams also. I know he's good at that too. And then they weren't done. They had another deal. Jake Hansen, and we reported this too, that they wouldn't tender him as a restricted free agent. And that's because the right of first refusal tender cost $3.263 million. Instead, he's back on a 1-year, $2 million deal with a base value of $1.7 million plus some playtime incentives. So they get him back. And Hansen, pretty good backup. He's an undrafted free agent from Illinois. Played for Lovie Smith there, then played for Lovie with the Texans. And 16 games last year, had a lot of tackles, was effective. A couple of starts, had a quarterback hit, had a sack, had 25 tackles as a rookie, and 65 career tackles, 2 sacks. So not the biggest linebacker, but tough and instinctive, finds the ball, and a very sound tackler. So another player they get back, and they've still been talking to another depth piece in Zach Thomas, the offensive lineman, and he's a former Patriot. I think he'll come back at lower than the tender. As I reported before, Kurt Hinish, 1 year, $2.35 million max, $1.8 million base value. So they get him back, and everybody's like, when are they going to get some guards? Yeah, I think they're going to get to it. I just, as we talked about earlier in the show, are they going to spend a lot, or are they going to be one of these teams that is looking for more of a bargain at the guard position to have somebody compete or take over the starting job? So there's all levels of guards. There's guards that are cheaper, like Will Hernandez, Tristan Colon, a couple of other guys to think about. I just haven't heard yet. Not that they necessarily doesn't mean that they might not be in some negotiation we haven't heard about yet. It is just the first day of free agency. The official first day of free agency really is Wednesday, but as you saw today with all the activity around the NFL, it already started. And it started weeks ago at the NFL Scouting Combine. That's when the seeds were planted for a lot of these deals. So a lot going on with the Texans. They had some activity today, probably not the most exciting things, but the big headlines. Laremy Tunsil, no longer a Texan. And Laremy, someone that I got to know and enjoyed covering these past few years, and his whole crew, all those guys, good guys and very good to deal with, big in the community, and definitely has a big heart for the single moms like his mom, and he did a lot in the community, and he was a good football player. Think about how many games they might not win without Tunsil protecting the blind side of C.J. Stroud, and only 2.5 sacks. He played a lot of snaps. He's out there against really good pass rushers, and he stonewalled a lot of them. And I do think that ultimately this came back to money, intangibles, penalties, age, and it was many factors, not just one thing. And I'm told a little bit about the goodbye. It was quick, short, Not real sweet, but nothing rude. It was just a quick goodbye. They thanked him for his time. He heard from the Commanders. And a little side note on this deal. Adam Peters, the Commanders general manager, is a former Patriots scout, just like Nick Caserio. They were roommates. They're great friends, and they used to play pickup basketball together in Foxborough, Massachusetts. Heard some good stories about Nick, and local townies get a little mad at him when he was playing basketball. Very intense, I'm told, with D-Up. And so those guys, old friends, did some business together, and they get this deal done. So the Commanders pick up a great tackle to protect Jaden Daniels, their star rookie quarterback, coming off of a great season, Rookie of the Year. And the Texans, they're now in limbo at one of the most important positions besides quarterback on the field, left tackle, and they'll have to figure this out. But yeah, the thinking is they want to change the culture. They want it to get younger. They want kind of a hungry, humble environment. Not to say that, Laremy wasn't hungry ever or humble, but they want it to be younger. They want guys in that kind of Patriots mold. So I'm expecting some, guys that get to be feisty, to be technicians, and they're looking to change things under the leadership of Nick Haley, the offensive coordinator, and offensive line coach and run game coordinator, Cole Popovich. So already putting their stamp on the Texans offseason. And yeah, keep it locked with me, please, at this channel mostly can be recapping at the end of the day. It's very busy during the day for me to do a lot of breaking news videos as soon as something happens. So apologize for that. It's just not the best time. I'm literally on my computer the entire day and on my phone texting and looking at databases and talking to a lot of people. So it is busy. But yeah, I just wanted to get a chance to have this important conversation with you guys. Of course, I'm on Twitter at @AaronWilson_NFL. I'm on Instagram at AaronWilson7128. And I am also, of course, at www.click2houston.com at KPRC2. Please keep it locked with us. We're going to give you more and more coverage of the NFL offseason and the Texans. As I mentioned before, I'll be at the NFL owners meetings. So I look forward to having conversations with Cal McNair, Hannah McNair. Hopefully I'll meet the team president, Mike Timone, at some point. Looking forward to getting to know him. Heard great things about him as a new hire. And, of course, we want to dig into the stadium issue at some point, but not today. Today is a day to talk about free agency and say goodbye to LT, number 78, Laremy Tunsil. It's been a lot of fun. And now he heads to D.C., my hometown. I don't know if I tell you guys that very often, but my family has had Redskins/Commanders tickets for 4 decades. I grew up watching the games. I'm not a fan anymore. I just watch the games, and it's my job to report on them. But my family, my mom, my brother, and other relatives, they love going to the games. They went to the playoff games, and now they get a heck of a left tackle to protect Jaden Daniels, and he's going to a contender. It's not like they traded him to Siberia. They traded him to a good football team, a contender that was in the championship game. So yeah, for Laremy, not a bad outcome, and I wouldn't be surprised if maybe they adjusted his contract. Something the Texans didn't want to do, and so he moves on to D.C., to the nation's capital. Laremy Tunsil, not elected for office, but nonetheless headed to Washington, headed to Capitol Hill, and we'll see what Laremy does. I'll be interested to watch how he performs for the Commanders, and I'm sure he'll feel like he has something to prove after being traded for the second time in his career. Look forward to our next conversation. Signing off. Talk to you soon.